Shadows of the Law. A love between two policewomen. The night detective Mara Reyes pulled a gun. On her own partner was the night. Everything she thought she knew about herself shattered, like glass on cold concrete. It was 3 a.m, the rain falling in sheets across the city of Calloway, and she was standing in a condemned building with her weapon raised, heart hammering and her eyes locked not on a criminal, but on Detective Sofia Vance, the woman she had spent 6 months trying to hate, and failed every single time. Mara had joined the Calloway Police Department at 23, driven by a grief she carried like an open wound. Her younger brother had been killed in a gang-related shooting when she was 19, and she had made herself a quiet, iron promise at his graveside that she would spend her life making sure other families did not have to fold flags and swallow tears. She was brilliant, relentless, and completely alone in the way that only deeply devoted people can be. She had no room for softness. Softness, she believed, was the thing that got people killed. She wore her loneliness like armor and told herself it was discipline. She rose through the ranks quickly, earned respect she never asked for, and built a life that looked impressive from the outside and felt like an empty corridor from within. Sofia Vance arrived at the Calloway precinct on a rainy Tuesday in February, transferred from the city's southern district after solving a high-profile trafficking case that had made her something of a legend in law enforcement circles. She was composed, sharp-eyed, and carried a quiet confidence that most people in the precinct mistook for arrogance. Mara mistook it too at first. They were assigned as partners on a deep-cover narcotics investigation, and within 48 hours, they had already argued twice, once about strategy, once about coffee, though even the coffee argument was really about control. Mara did not like Sofia because Sofia did not back down. And in a world where Mara had trained everyone around her to defer to her instincts, Sofia's refusal to yield felt like a personal challenge. What Mara did not yet understand was that it was also the most honest thing anyone had offered her in years. The investigation they were working consumed them both. A powerful drug ring was moving narcotics through the city's waterfront, hidden inside shipments of medical equipment, and the operation had tentacles that reached uncomfortably close to the department itself. There had already been one whistleblower, a young officer named Denny Cho, who had filed an internal complaint and then disappeared without explanation. The official story was reassignment. Mara did not believe the official story. Neither did Sofia. That shared disbelief became the first real thread between them. A thin and fragile thing at first, like a spider's silk, barely visible but stronger than it looked. They spent long nights in surveillance vans, eating cold takeout and speaking in low voices about the case, about the city, about the things they had seen in this line of work that never quite left a person's mind. Mara noticed things about Sofia in those hours that she had not noticed in the bright, defended daylight of the precinct. She noticed that Sofia kept a small, worn photograph tucked into the back cover of her case notebook and never showed anyone what it was. She noticed that Sofia laughed at things other people missed, the absurd, sad human things that fell through the cracks of serious situations. She noticed that when Sofia was tired, she did not get sharp the way Mara did. She got quiet instead, and the quiet was something that Mara found herself leaning into without meaning to. There was a moment around the 3rd month of the investigation when everything shifted in a way that neither of them addressed directly, but both of them felt completely. They had received a credible tip that one of their informants had been compromised, and they had driven to his apartment in the middle of the night to get him out before someone else got there first. The informant was already gone, fled on his own, thankfully. But the apartment had been searched and ransacked, and it was clear that whoever had done it recently. They stood in that dark, upended room and understood simultaneously that the corruption inside their own department ran deeper than either of them had wanted to believe. It was Sofia who reached out first, not with words, not with a speech, but simply by placing her hand over Mara's for a single moment in the dark. It lasted no longer than 3 seconds, but Mara felt it for days afterward, like a bruise she did not want to heal. She began quietly and with enormous resistance to let Sofia in, not in the ways that she talked about, cases or tactics, and that door had opened, naturally as they worked together. This was something different. This was the door she had sealed shut since her brother died. The one that led to the part of her that was still a person and not just a detective. She told Sofia about her brother one evening, unprompted in the parking lot of an all-night diner, and Sofia listened without performing sympathy, without offering solutions. She simply listened, and when Mara finished, she said something that Mara had never expected anyone to say. She said that Mara's grief was the most honest thing she had ever witnessed in another person, and that she was sorry the world had required so much of her for so long. Mara sat with those words for a long time after. They rearranged something inside her. But the world they lived in was not kind to softness, and the investigation was growing more dangerous by the week. When they finally identified the inside man and a senior lieutenant named Hargrove, who had been on the force for 20 years and was beloved by nearly everyone in the building, and they knew they were standing on a cliff's edge. Hargrove had access to everything. Every file, every informant, every move they had made. And when Mara found evidence that suggested Hargrove had been the one behind Denny Cho's disappearance, the situation stopped being professional and became something else entirely. It became survival. Hargrove moved first. He must have known they were getting close, because he made a calculated decision to turn them against each other. He fed Mara fabricated evidence that suggested Sofia was a mole, that her transfer to Calloway had been arranged by the Ring to monitor the investigation from the inside. It was elegant, terrible work, built from half-truths and plausible details, designed by someone who understood exactly how fear operates inside a person who has already been betrayed before. Mara looked at the file Hargrove placed in front of her and felt the armor she had spent years constructing slam back into place. She felt herself close like a fist. She did not confront Sofia with questions. She pulled away instead, quietly and completely, the way she had learned to manage pain, by eliminating the source before it could eliminate her. Sofia noticed the withdrawal and tried to reach her, and Mara shut every attempt down with the practiced coldness of someone who had survived by never letting themselves be held. For 2 weeks they circled each other like strangers, and the investigation stalled, and the distance between them felt enormous and wrong in a way that Mara could not bring herself to examine directly. It was a throwaway detail in a financial record that finally cracked Hargrove's fabrication open, a timestamp that could not be explained by the narrative he had constructed. Mara found it at 2 a.m, alone at her desk, and she sat very still, for a long time as everything rearranged itself in front of her eyes. The evidence against Sofia was constructed, all of it. And Mara had believed it not because it was convincing, but because she had been looking for a reason to stop being afraid of what she felt. She found Sofia at the condemned waterfront warehouse that Hargrove had used as a meeting point. Sofia had tracked him there alone without backup, because she had been trying to clear her own name without Mara's help. Mara arrived to find Sofia inside, and Hargrove behind her with a weapon drawn, and in the terrible, compressed chaos of the next 60 seconds, Mara moved through the darkness and placed herself between them. There was shouting, a struggle, backup that arrived because Mara had called it before she entered the building. Hargrove was taken into custody. The case broke open, and Mara and Sofia stood in the rain outside that building, breathing, and did not speak for a long time. What Mara finally said was not dramatic. It was not a speech. It was simply the truth, offered without decoration. The way she had learned truth had to be offered to mean anything at all. She told Sofia that she had been afraid, that the fear had made her cruel, and that she was sorry. Sofia looked at her for a long moment in the rain and then pulled her close. And Mara, who had not allowed herself to be held by anyone in more than 10 years, did not pull away. The weeks that followed were not easy ones. Hargrove's arrest sent tremors through the entire department. There were internal investigations, suspensions, testimony that went on for days. Mara and Sofia were scrutinized and cleared, but the scrutiny left marks. They also had to navigate what they were becoming to each other in a profession that had not always been generous to women who loved women, in a city that watched its officers with complicated eyes. They did not hide, but they did not announce. They simply existed together and honestly, in the way that people do when they have survived something that clarified what matters. Mara thought often about the version of herself that had arrived at this precinct years ago, sealed and purposeful and utterly alone. She thought about how convinced That version had been that the armor was protection, that the distance was wisdom. She understood now that she had not been protecting herself. She had been disappearing herself, slowly and deliberately, in the name of a grief she had never let anyone help her carry. Sofia had not rescued her from that. That was not how it worked, and Mara was too clear-eyed to tell the story that way. What Sofia had done was simply refuse to accept the distance as the final word. She had stayed present, and consistent and honest, and she had made it possible for Mara to find her own way back. If you have ever felt like you had to carry everything alone, like softness was a liability and love was something you could not afford, then this story is for you. Please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to be reminded that letting people in is not weakness. It is, in fact, the most courageous thing a person can do. The city of Calloway kept moving, as cities do, indifferent and enormous and full of shadows. But inside those shadows, two women who had chosen a life of law found something the law could not give them and could not take away. They found each other, and in finding each other, they found their way back to themselves, not as the polished, defended versions they had presented to the world, but as real and human and imperfect people, capable of being broken and of beginning again. If this story moved something in you, if it reminded you of someone you love, or someone you have been, or someone you are still becoming, please leave a comment below and tell us what part stayed with you the most. Your words matter more than you know. There is a particular kind of bravery that has nothing to do with weapons or warrants or the courage it takes to walk toward danger in the dark. It is the bravery of remaining open when every wound in your history is telling you to close. Mara Reyes learned that bravery not in a training room or on a rooftop or in the decorated silence of a commendation ceremony. She learned it in surveillance vans and rainy parking lots and the small, accumulating moments that do not look like turning points until you are standing far enough away to see the shape of your own life. And what she found on the other side of all that fear was not just love. It was herself, and finally, fully and without apology,